So Tim, I'm set up on Vocabulary Builder.
Mm-hmm.
Where do I start?
Well, here on the dashboard, if you've hit play here, all you need to do is hit go, and it's going to start you at the first lesson.
First lesson.
So go ahead.
Okay.
Okay, so it's going to introduce to you some new words, as you can see there in the instructions, and then it's going to quiz you a little bit. It's going to give you a few and then quiz you a little bit, and then give you a few and then quiz you a little bit at a very low level. So you probably won't miss any.
Tabula.
Okay, so tabula. Now this is a little complicated. This is a higher level thing, a higher level course where it's actually teaching you to interact with these words in a little bit of a more serious way. So the word tabula here, you have to read here. It's a board or tablet used for various purposes, including as a map. Here, we're using it as the word for a map.
Okay.
So once you've got that, you could practice the pronunciation a little bit.
Tabula.
Tabula.
Tabula. Good.
Tabula.
Okay.
And then go ahead and hit the thumbs up there.
Mare.
Mare.
Good. And again, you can read there. You can see a definition, some translations. You got it. You can move on.
Okay.
Terra.
Terra.
Good.
Terra.
And this is, Vocabulary Builder really gets at some of the complexity of some of these words. A word like terra can mean a lot of things. The planet, it can mean, land as opposed to sea, or it can mean like soil. It's got all of these sorts of different meanings here, and you're going to read about this there, and then once you kind of get an idea for it, you can move on.
Okay. Very good.
Fluvius.
Fluvius.
Good. And here again, it's a little bit more complicated. I mean, you might be tempted to look at a word like that and think it's just a river. Well, it's not quite just that. It's a little broader than that, and so you can read that there.
Large flow river.
Yeah.
Okay.
Insula.
Insula.
Okay.
Body of land surrounded by water.
Good. And all right.
Okay, so now it's quizzing me.
Insula.
Good. Now, so we've moved to the quiz mode, and as you go ahead and hit thumbs up.
Insula.
Now, this is a passive kind of testing. So you know the word insula, and you want to see where it's being used. Now, it could just be the picture, or it could be in context. You haven't learned any of the context ones yet, but which one is insula?
The
Good.
island.
So it starts off with a really, really low level recognition. So it's really easy. As you go through the app, it's going to ask harder and harder questions that require you to have a much higher mastery of it. So
Including context, not just the words.
absolutely.
Okay.
So go ahead and hit OK. Tabula.
Tabula.
Tabula. Fluvius.
Fluvius.
Good. And if at any point you want to review, you can, remember, hit this little icon button, and it just allows you to go back to your notes and review.
Okay.
And for some of the more difficult ones, it's a good idea.
Terra.
Terra.
Okay, so that would be
There you go.
uh,
Good work,
firm ground.
right?
Mare.
Mare.
Okay. So actually there's two so ocean, and then there seems to be water.
Right.
I'm guessing the context is ocean here.
Yeah, so that's more of the idea. And if you want to review that, you can look there. I mean,
Mare.
it's not just water. It's a
Right.
very large body like a sea or an ocean or something like that.
Right.
Oppidum.
Oops.
Oppidum. Okay, so now I'm learning new words.
Yep. Yeah, so you've tested a little bit of the stuff you learned, and it's going to go back and introduce a little bit more.
Okay.
And then add as it goes.
In.
So this is the first non-noun.
That's
Or
right.
place.
That's right. And it's the first place where we're going to see the word used in context. So if you're going to click on that.
Silva in tabula est.
So here we actually have a sentence that makes sense. Okay, we've got silva, which you've already learned, which
Right.
means a forest. And we already know the word tabula, which means map. And then it's going to teach you this word in, which is obvious for English speakers.
Right.
But it means on. And so you have the forest is on the map. Now, say you couldn't figure that out, hit the question mark beside it, And you're going to have a nice little definition there, just long enough for you to be able to see what it means, because it wants to keep you in the Latin as much as possible, but the English is always there to help you if you need it.
I see. Okay. So yeah, that's great. Aqua.
aqua,
That would be the water.
Mm-hmm. Now, have you used this before just now?
I have not used this before.
You've never seen it. You haven't
Not
gotten
this
any
one.
wrong yet.
Not yet.
And the reason why is because we introduced just a few of them, and then you get to practice those at a very low level, and then we added a few more. And that's what the app is designed to do, is to very slowly have you kind of wade in and then practice. And that way it's not nearly as frustrating as just having a whole bunch of stuff dumped on you at once.
Right.
in,
Okay. So, so again, a contextual.
silva in tabula est,
Now, as you're doing this, you're going to actually start hearing Latin sentences used in a meaningful way. And,
Okay.
and the more you use it, the more you're going to hear these. Silva in tabula est. And you're going to hear it, it makes sense, and that's really one of the main pathways for learning a language. And it's very effective. It's a context learning. So you learn an example sentence for something, and then it makes sense in the picture. And that's something that's going to solidify the meaning of the word, not just an English translation or a definition or a picture. It's all of them. So,
Okay. Oppidum.
oppidum,
That was. It's interesting. When oppidum came up, I actually couldn't remember the definition, but the visual cue reminded me.
that's right.
That was.
And so, because it's a lower level of learning. As we move on in the app, then it's going to flip things around where you might have to see the visual cue and then choose it, or see a definition, or see a translation and have to choose it. And you have to have a higher level of learning. But that's okay. At this point, that's fine. So
Right.
go-
See, I'm not sure if I would have been ready to see the picture and then have to write it.
Probably not.
So,
Yep.
yeah. Quid.
quid,
Now, this one's a little bit of a
quid est,
complicated one. Okay, so you see what he's doing there. Explain that picture.
He is confused and wondering about something, I would say.
And then what does he say?
What is it?
Right. Okay, so he's looking at this thing at a distance, and he's going, quid est. And that question, quid est, what is that?
Yeah.
Okay, it's creating a scenario for you to use the word. And it's complicated, but you can't draw a picture of what.
Right.
There is no such thing as a picture of what, but you can draw a picture of a scenario in which it makes sense.
Right.
And so we're using it in a meaningful way. And so you can memorize this question of quid est, and then, oh yeah, that's what he's asking.
I see this becoming language that kids are using all the time, and
It
which
is.
is great.
Yeah, so as they kind of hear these things, as you know, when they hear stuff all the time, they repeat it.
Right.
And so all these little sentences that they're hearing, they actually start repeating them, and they should come
Right.
up in class and
So
stuff like
even
that.
if parents aren't using the app for themselves, which they can, I understand, they're going to start hearing some Latin around the house.
Yeah, that's likely.
ubi,
Ubi, so where?
Yes, good. Okay, and you can double check your guess.
Terra.
So he's looking at this map. He's wondering where this obscure island is. He has no idea where it is, but it makes sense, and you can see again the explanation if you didn't get it.
Right. Heek.
hic,
So they're here. Okay, so here.
So and it's a little bit of a story. So in the first one, he's like, okay, he's looking for it, so he's asking ubi, and now he's looking at it and going, oh, okay, hic est. So again, using it in a meaningful way.
Okay. Lapis.
lapis,
Okay, so stone, boulder, rock, or tombstone.
It's all sorts of
quid,
things.
Okay.
So now, once you've gotten to the point where you're really putting things in context, you'll find yourself just reading the sentences with an eye to the context.
Right. So,
And
yeah.
and then you just fill it in and read it out loud.
quid est,
Quid est. And so it's forcing you to actually use it in a meaningful way.
lapis,
Lapis.
Good.
Hic. Hic est terra.
Now, here, that was one that was a little complicated, and it took you a second
Yeah.
to figure it out. But once you figured out the example, it becomes this thing where you remember the scenario, and then you're able to use it and remember the whole thing.
I didn't just memorize hic. I'm remembering a context. So,
Right, a little story that goes along with it that helps.
ubi.
Ubi.
So that's a question. So ubi est terra.
Ubi est terra.
Nice juxtaposition.
Multus.
What does that mean?
Much, abundant, ample, copious, plentiful. So
Yeah,
lots of rocks.
Lots of rocks. And this is one of those things where it's kind of hard to
stones.
translate this word without a bunch of English words. The idea is simple.
Right.
Okay. In Latin, multus lapis. It's not hard, and we can kind of give you a fuller explanation.
Multus lapis.
But if I were to give you an English translation, just what word would I use? A whole lot of? Or
Right.
like it's difficult because this is an adjective, as you could see there.
Right.
Whereas a whole lot of is a bunch of other things.
Right.
So anyway, it makes it simple.
Vir decimus vir est.
Decimus vir est.
Decimus. So decimus is a name here.
Yep, that's
Okay.
right. So a lot of times we'll use an example with a name there, decimus vir est. Yeah, and you pronounced it decimus like most English speakers would, and it's
Right.
just going to correct you.
Well, there we go. That's
So-
good.
Decimus vir est.
Graicus.
Graecus. Themistocles vir Graecus est.
The mysticlo. Ooh, I'm gonna listen to that one again.
Themistocles vir Graecus est.
Themistocles vir Graecus est. Okay, so Greek.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Imperium.
Imperium.
This is a little bit of an example, I guess.
Imperium Romanum.
So the word means, as you can see here, it means command in the sense of like an order, but it's frequently used to mean all the land under the order.
Okay.
And here, the Imperium Romanum it's the empire, meaning the land under the control or order of the Romans. So you get to learn a little bit even about the English word empire.
Right.
And the connection between that. It's not the same thing as a country.
Right. Okay.
Provincia.
So provincia would be part of an empire.
That's right.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hispania provincia Romana est.
And one of the things that we try to do here is in our translations, we're going to use some technical terminology on purpose that they might not know already, like a vassal state. Okay?
Right.
That's probably not something they're going to use, but just by reading through this, they can pick up some of the English, and we're always looking to include some of those words in there.
That's great. Imperium.
Imperium Romanum.
Good. Now you'll notice that as you're doing this, I don't hear you saying any English.
Right.
You were actually just using Latin words in context with comprehension in a meaningful way. That's how you learn language. Now, so you get confused, you always have that English to run back to.
Right.
So it's safe.
Yes. I won't get too confused.
No.
Graicus.
Themistocles vir
There you
Graecus
go.
est.
With a Greek-looking name.
Yeah. So locus. Okay,
Locus.
so a new
Hic est locus in tabula.
hic. So the English would be here. Okay. So,
Well, no, look at that a little careful.
nope,
A little
here
bit.
is a place. Okay, I see.
So yeah, this is again one of those where you can't draw a picture of a place,
Right.
but we can draw a picture of a context in which you use this. So yeah, you have to spend a little time, think about the logic of it, read a little bit about it, and then you can move on.
Where the treasure is, a place.
Yeah, there you go.
And place X marks the spot.
Hic
There
est
you go.
locus in tab.
Excellent. Ah, there you
I
go.
don't know. It looks like I'm a. What does that make me? A B plus.
Oh no,
A
I think it's
minus.
better than that. It's probably more like an A minus. But again, this wasn't a quiz. This was you going through it.
Right.
And so the
And-
fact that you were able to get that many right when you didn't know any of those words or very few of them,
Right.
is great.
And I could retake it. And
You could, if you wanted to get 5 stars, if you struggle with perfectionism and you feel like you're not secure until you have 5, then yeah.
There we go.
Okay, so you can also.
So I just completed the first lesson of chapter 1.
That's right.
Okay.
And so if we were to go on to if you were to hit go again, it's not going to do the same thing. It would advance, you'd be doing something a little bit more advanced. It'd have you choose from one direction and then switch and have you choose from a different direction. We go to spelling and we can go to different forms and things like that. And also, you don't just hit go. If you want to, you can always choose what you want to review or practice. If you hit train there,
Okay.
okay, and what you're going to see is all these chapters. Now, you're not allowed to go on ahead because they have to be unlocked. But since you've done the map, you can choose a game here. And we have some options. We have, choose the picture, kind of a recognition. We have something where you are typing in the answer. And for more advanced Latin students, one of the coolest things is we can do all of the extra forms. So now you're not going to know the answer to this because you haven't gotten this far, but it'll actually teach you all the extra forms for these words. It'll say them out loud and then you type them. And if you get them wrong, it'll kind of review and type and tell them again. But anyway, it allows you to practice all of those extra forms, principal parts, genders, irregular genitives, all of the things that make Latin hard. It does it through a little game that's safe in that you get to practice it, you get it wrong, it's going to correct you, you're going to hear it out loud. And you don't want to jump into that at this point. But
so that would be something you would jump into after you've gone through more of the course.
That's right. Just hitting go, you're going to go through that first. This is the easy setting, and so it's not going to force you into those hard forms. They're optional. All you have to do is hit train, and then you can do them.
Okay.
On the normal setting, those would automatically come up in the regular campaign.
I see. Okay. So there's how many levels are there on Vocabulary Builder?
Right now we have just easy, which is nice on the, you don't have to do the forms.
I got 4 stars.
Yeah. But on the normal one, it's similar, except for it's going to have some of those extra things where you're forced to practice the verb forms and all of those sorts of things. Eventually we'll be adding, we'll probably add some more levels with some more complicated.
Advanced, okay.
Yeah.
So if someone's had a lot of Latin, is already fairly familiar, they can go a lot deeper. Or if they're just beginning, they can just start with the easy. Very good.
Well, this is a vocabulary builder, and many people, almost everyone, even if they've had a lot of Latin, needs to work on their vocab. And so this is something where someone who's had a lot could go through this quicker, but they're going to review a lot of stuff they don't know, and their pronunciation is going to get better. And then the more time they've seen these words, they're going to get more fluent. And most people haven't had the opportunity to kind of think in the language and kind of use it in this active sort of way. And this sort of trains you along to do that. So.
Well, thanks. I learned a lot today.
Well, sure, you did great.